Hello everyone, Switch Down here. This video might be a little bit different. I decided to tell something about myself, like something more not much too much personal, but something more about myself, like who as a person. I don't remember if I had made a video telling about myself. Well, currently I am 29. It's going to be turned 30 by the end of the year in October. I know, long way there. So, and as the title of my username, Swedish Diablo. Yes, I'm from Sweden, and I know Scandinavians. We're crazy people, Vikings and everything. Yeah, and I would say I'm not 100% Swedish. No, in fact, only about a year or 2 years ago, I have been asking my parents if I could take this DNA ancestry test to see what other ancestry I might have. And I did actually get a DNA kit from last Christmas, but I didn't send in one until around early this year because during the holidays I decided to wait. And since I already knew that my dad's side of the family is from Finland, which is Finnish, and from my mom's side is Swedish. And I did expect to have around large amount, almost 50-50 of both. But they didn't show up as unexpected. I will also reveal the result. And the result were Swedish Swedish or Scandinavian part 36.9% and 56.1% Finnish, but also 7% bought from Latvia or in the Latvia region, for example, or Lithuania, or from the right. But there was another part which didn't show up on my result, but my parents, they also did this DNA test, and for my dad's side, it showed 97% Finnish, and some percentage I don't actually don't remember how much of both result. But they were not at the side of an ancestry from his side of family, which were completely different. 1.4% Japanese and Korean. So I am 0.7% Japanese and Korean. So why didn't that show up on my test? No idea. But when I heard that was part Japanese and Korean, I was like, what did my grandparents do? And I was really surprised that I am part Japanese and Korean. I'd expected maybe have some other European ancestry, like German or perhaps even Russian. But most Swedish and Finnish and Swedish and both. But part Japanese and Korean, I was like, mind blowing. I mean, seriously. Did I expect to have that part of my ancestry? No way. And fortunately, even if I did could ask, but when you ask 1.4% of my dad's side, you may ask, how far is that in generations? Not far, probably only one generation. But from which side of the family is it coming from? I don't know. If my dad's parents, my grandfather and grandmother were still alive, I couldn't ask them. But unfortunately, no, since my grandfather passed away when I was about almost 4 years old, and my grandmother passed away when I was about 1.5 years old, so almost 2 years. So I had no memories of them. And even if they were alive today, they would have been in their 80s today. But I would be very interested to know if they knew if from which side of the family who the part of this ancestry. But nevertheless, part Korean and Japanese is quite interesting. Sadly, since I don't know if any other family members who from my dad's side knew about this. Even my dad has two sisters, one older half sister, so I don't know if she is has any Japanese or Korean ancestry herself. So, anyways, my family also goes way back in generations. But how many exact? Well, I cannot say for sure, but the only one that I can go for is my great 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 grandfather. At least maybe 4 or 5 generations back. I know that my great grandfather from my dad's side once was in part of the Winter War during the Second World War in Finland. So, and as I said, my family goes far back from my paternal grandmother's side. They goes back as the 1600s. They were traders, and not a trader, but as merchants. They were trading goods, other sorts of things, and even farmers. But from my grandfather's side, or of my dad's side, it goes to the 1500s, and they were mostly farmers. So, never not normal or any royal blood in my line. So, but I don't care. As long as I have a long family line, I don't mind. And from my mother's side, though, well, that is not easy much either, because even we do have, even don't have much as a family tree line itself, but at least what she's told me around 1600, what she believes. So there's also about 500 years in history, something like that. And but I don't know much about that. Anyways, I even have some relatives that lives in U.S. United States from both sides of the family actually. Since my paternal grandmother has a relatives that moved to U.S. about more than 100 years ago, and some of my mom's side of the family has some relatives that moved to U.S. during the 1800s. So, but since we don't know, since if there are any of those family members still alive, but though, nonetheless, I am actually quite proud to have that big kind of family. And what else about know about myself? Well, since basically I live in a small community, like a small town, or well, technically there isn't a town. Even the population is about 6,000 in total in an entire community, but the entire county has around 8,000. Since, and you may also ask, if your community has 6,000 people but never had been and doesn't even called a town, well, you see, in my country, we have something so called city rights or something similar, and even if we could just give the right to my town or my community, well, sadly, that's not possible anymore because that system was removed 1971. But even though that my community was formed during the 1500s, but I was also born in a larger town, which is not far from where I currently live. That town has around 60, I think around 67 or 68,000 people in total, but in that county has around 100,000 people. So that is one of the biggest communities in part where I live. But anyways, what about myself? Well, I am The second oldest, I have an older sister and a younger brother. And I'm used to be the even the tallest in the family for at least for a couple of years until my brother grew past me. So, but I was even furious or something that he grew taller than me. I just still I am the second tallest in the family now, after me, my dad, and my brother. My brother. The height itself has been passed down in my family for at least, I think, 4 or 5 generations, around 6 feet tall. So I pretty much, if I have a son myself, it's highly likely that he would end up being 6 feet. So probably. And what else to know about myself? Well, my hobbies is like I like to play bowling, listen to scary stories, and even draw, make my own stories, true love, true friend, and others. And of course, talk to friends, and of course, talk to my girlfriend almost every day. Otherwise, from that, there isn't much else to know. Well, I am, of course, a brownie for at least a few years now. And also, what kind of movies I prefer? Well, comedy, horror. But sadly, there hasn't been any good horror movies for the past few years. But comedy, though, that is something that there is at least a couple of good movies I enjoy. And what kind of music I like? Pop, hip hop, and, well, almost any kind except from any rock type music. Well, the only type of rock that I could actually like is the early 1950s with Elvis Presley. That kind of rock is the only type of rock music I prefer. And that is basically all I can say for now. I mean, what I can came up with. And I hope everyone enjoys this little short video about or something about myself. So, but anyways, and as always, subscribe, leave a comment, and as always, this is Switch Down over and out.